It's sunset and I'm driving a 2009 Honda S2000 CR. Coming up a little bit later, I'm going to tell you how this car changed my life and set me on the correct path for a career in automotive journalism. But before all that, information explosion. To add a little bit of detail, I was amazed to learn that Honda has a 2009 S2000 in their press fleet. As a former S2000 owner, it made a lot of sense for me to beg and plead and see if I could get my hands on it, and they were kind enough to give it to me. And now I'm driving it from LA up to Big Bear for a day's worth of downhill mountain biking with some friends. Well, I survived a day of downhill mountain biking. Let's talk about the interior. Also, if you like the fact that I went downhill mountain biking and did not come back injured, push the like button. When I owned my S2000, one of the things I loved so much about it was the driver-focused cockpit. And it doesn't feel exclusionary to the passenger, but all of the essential controls are placed right here within easy reach. The simplicity of the arrangement always stuck out to me. And now that I'm reacquainting myself with the S2000, I still think it's cool. You've got some audio controls on the left, which I always thought was a little bit odd actually, that you have supplemental audio controls on the left side near the start button because the radio is right here. On the right side, you've got climate controls, and Honda always does a really good job of simplifying that interface. This really couldn't be any simpler. Now, if memory serves me correctly, the cruise control buttons are a little bit different on this 2009 model. On mine, it was literally just two buttons on the steering wheel, one for set and decel and one for resume and accel. And if you wanted to cancel, you pushed them both at the same time, whereas the car I'm driving has an actual cancel button. Getting a little fancy with three buttons for cruise control, huh? In terms of space, I can see the S2000 being too small for some, but for me, it's always fit just right. The seats actually fit me really well too. As you may know, I'm a bit of a lumbar snob, and the static lumbar in the S2000 seats is perfect. It feels like it's tailor-made for me. I do have a complaint though. Armrest here. I don't know if this is harder than it was in mine, but there's like no padding here. If you want to drive in an 8 and 4, maybe when you're cruising, your inboard elbow might get a little bit sore. But that's the thing about the S2000 is it's very much a 9 and 3 car. There are no rear windows, so we will not be doing a rear window test. Let's talk about cargo. So the trunk is comparatively small, but you can make it work. For example, I crammed that tarp and baggage and video gear in the trunk, and it all kind of worked. We'll also notice that since this is a later version, this is the AP2 version of the S2000, they made some updates to the interior. So in mine, which was a 2002 S2000, there was no space for the passenger to put anything by their legs. There's no actual glove compartment here, but they kind of engineered like some nooks down there. Same thing in the doors. One of the things I really liked when I got my S2000 is that there are little bitty secrets. This is a storage spot that you can put a little bit of gear, but there's a secret storage spot that is right under the top part here. So there's a little secret lever, and you flip it up, and there's more storage space there. So even if you forget to lock that and somebody gets in there, that upper space is so innocuous that they might not know. Unless you make a video about it, and then thieves will know exactly where your secret stuff is hidden. Sorry. In total, I've always loved the S2000's interior aesthetic because it is so minimal and free from distractions that it really puts you in the mindset of driving rather than doing anything else. Style! It's weirder to yell the segments when the top is off. You imagine just like walking along the side of the road and some guy drives by an S2000 and yells, "Style!" Much like the interior, the exterior of the S2000 is minimalist. It was never too radical with its design. I always thought the rear 3/4 was the best angle. The front felt a little bit plain to me. Obviously this is the CR, so it's got some aerodynamic bits that are functional. You got that big wing out back, and you got the front fascia. It's got some aesthetic swagger. The color doesn't hurt. I've gotten quite a few compliments, actually. Some random woman while I was shooting B-roll noted, "Very nice car." Thank you, random woman. I also received a lot of enthusiasm on Instagram for the S2000 CR, and if you're not following me on Instagram, for shame. How else are you going to send me explicit direct messages that I have to then shy away and then tell my wife, "Sweetie, you'll never guess what they said today." In motion! And I am really tired from a day on the mountain, so I'm going to do that tomorrow. All right, I've got coffee. I'm about to head back home from Big Bear to Los Angeles. And by the way, that is a beautiful drive, so this is a perfect opportunity to talk about how the S2000 is on the road. So the S2000 CR has a quicker steering ratio, firmer suspension, a cross brace beneath the rear tonneau cover here, this cool little section right here. The thing is, my memories of my S2000 make it so that all of this stuff feels like what I felt when I was driving it previously. So you'd really need to do a back-to-back to get some of those nuances. But just driving around town, yeah, it's kind of a firm ride, but for the context of a car that's only about driving, that's not so bad. Leaving from a stop here, the clutch effort is a little bit heavy. Get that ripped left calf look of somebody who drives a manual. Speaking of the manual, the shifter here is a little bit shorter than the one that was in my car. So it's got this round ball. I think it's like a 6% shorter throw or something. I honestly didn't notice when I was driving. Although I do like the yellow inset shift pattern here. That looks quite sharp. My S2000 was the AP1, so that had the Redline that was up to right around 9,000 RPM and 240 horsepower, 153 pound-feet of torque. So not a torque monster, really relied on revs. As a motorcycle guy, that resonated with me. It made a lot of sense. This is the AP2, and for the AP2, displacement increased to 2.2 liters, and horsepower dropped to 237, but there was a bump in torque, up to 162 pound-feet. I think the idea was to make the S2000 a little bit more drivable, a little more well-rounded, not quite so peaky, but the Redline dropped. And what's funny about the Redline is that even in S2000 forums, nobody seemed to know what the exact Redline was on an AP1 and an AP2. I think the way it works is that there's the Redline, which in the AP1 was like 8,900, and then there's a couple hundred RPM overage, a little overrun space. In this one, it's right about 8,000, but I think you can take it up to 8,200 or so. It's all academic. What you need to know is that the AP1 had about 1,000 RPM more to work with. So the thing I loved about my AP1 is that when you were on a racetrack, which that's literally the only place I ever drove my S2000, to the track, at the track, from the track. But when you were driving on a track in anger, you were always in the VTEC zone. The gearing and the revs really matched. So for me, I kind of missed that almost 9,000 RPM wail of the AP1. That does speak to the core nature of the S2000, which is when you're outside of the VTEC zone at that upper band of the rev range, that's floored. Needless full throttle acceleration. Sure, there's a little something there. It doesn't feel fast, at least not by modern standards. Really got a wail on it. I'm coming to a windier section of road, which will be fun. But before I get there, I'd like to note that the S2000 provides a brilliant view of the sky. Sometimes the windshield surround comes too close to the driver, and visually it feels like you're just driving in a normal windier car. But this, you really see the sky in your peripheral view, which gives you that strong sense that you're driving something truly connected with the outside world. I love that. Coming out to a corner, there's a biker there, braking hard. Brakes feel good. Interestingly, the brake pedal arrangement in relation to the gas pedal, I didn't remember it being that far apart. Heel toe downshifts, I think I just adapted when I had my S2000. They're a little bit further apart than I would prefer. Okay, brilliant winding road filled with bicyclists and a super slow Chevy Suburban in front of me. Just tapping some of the fun out of the experience. But hey, look at that view. Coffee break. While I'm taking a coffee break, be sure to subscribe and like, won't you? Go ahead, crash that like button, I'll wait. VTEC! We don't speak about it much these days, but when electric power assist came into vogue for steering, there were a lot of complaints about the quality of the steering feel. Oh, the hydraulic systems are much better. The S2000 has electric steering assist, and I don't remember hearing too many complaints about it. It's interesting how Honda, right out the gate, kind of nailed it, at least within this context. There's gonna be a moment up here where I get to drive quicker. Let me sip my coffee so it doesn't go a-spilling. Oh, I sense a passing zone coming up. We're free! I'm gonna roll the windows up so it's not so windy. Let's see how she handles. Yeah. Planted, confident transitions from left to right. The prime behavior in my S2000 was a tendency to oversteer, or a willingness to oversteer. As a track tool, it was a brilliant education for me in managing a car. In fact, it really defines who I am as a driver. I know they made suspension changes for the AP2 that made it a little more planted. On a street environment, that's great, because you don't want to snap oversteer into a tree while driving down from Big Bear after a great couple of days of riding. On a track environment though, I found that sort of tail-happy nature to be super fun. I really got a lot out of that. So if it were my choice, I'd probably go with an AP1. But I certainly wouldn't kick this one out of bed. Ooh, left lane squatter. On your right. I don't know how your day's going, but this is fantastic. Oh, VTEC, 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 VTEC. Yay! Enough scoot to get around that Jeep Cherokee. Good job, S2000. Honda Ridgeline, letting me pass. Flashers and a wave. You know, sometimes in car reviews, people kind of do that sort of fake laugh thing, like, ha ha ha. I don't need that. This is pure joy, genuine joy. I feel like I'm home. Not gonna find a better segue. Emotion factor. There's a lot of ways to achieve emotion in a vehicle, but the S2000 is singular in its purpose, which is driving pleasure. It's very much about the drive, and everything else is secondary. There's no screen here. The radio has a cover that you flip up. In fact, when I had my S2000, I bought it, and you have to put in a code from the dealership if you remove the battery to reactivate the audio system. I decided I am never going to activate that radio, and I never did, because I wanted that car to be about driving, only about driving. And that aligns with the S2000's credo. The feedback you get from the car, the sound, the fact that you, to exploit its potential, have to push it hard, all of that stuff is hugely interactive. This isn't a passive vehicle. That perpetually interactive nature makes the S2000 hugely emotive. As the pace mellows down just a little bit behind this Toyota Matrix, I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. Remarks. Oh man, there's a lot to cover here. Specificity breeds character. When you get into the car, you put the keys in the ignition, turn it all the way, and then have to push the start button, that little red start button. Every time you start the car, there's a little bit of an event to it. That red button, it's a great way to kick things off in the morning. On the day I bought my S2000, I went to the gas station and could not, for the life of me, figure out how to open up the fuel filler door. So I had to go online on my phone, which did a terrible job accessing the internet, and figure it out on a message board. There's a secret little hole right here next to the driver's side door. You'd never know it was there unless you knew it was there. The CR has some particularly neat details, not the least of which being this tonneau cover back here that I think looks super cool, but with that cover in place, they removed the soft top mechanism, helping save weight. They also ditched the spare tire, so the CR is about 90 pounds lighter than the standard S2000. Oh, thank God there's a passing zone. Use the turnouts. I'm passionate about slower traffic keeping right. In the interest of weight savings, the CR also came standard without AC or a radio. I'd be fine skipping the radio, but I definitely want AC, so it was a $1,000 option to get those two bundled together. It is also a little weird too. The muscle memory of button placement makes you want to use the soft top switch here. There's just a little blank. The CR also has a little green light that comes on in the gauge cluster that lets you know when the engine is making peak power, but from my perspective, when in doubt, rev it out. Hey! I suppose the last unfamiliar detail here is the VSA off switch here. That means that this S2000 has stability control. In my S2000 ownership experience, my car had no stability control. What that does is it really puts the responsibility on the driver to get things right. Because if you don't, really bad things can happen. I kind of like the commitment of driving a car with zero active assist. Consequences will make you a better driver. And now that we're in the gaggle of traffic, windows down. Is the Honda S2000 family friendly? No, it is not. Though I will mention, even though my wife's not in this video, my wife always supported my ownership of the S2000. I think from the perspective of keeping me happy as a member of the family, the S2000 certainly helped. More S2000 footage. This S2000 is owned by Honda, so this is meticulously maintained. No problems here. When I had my S2000, it was essentially bulletproof. And the only issue I ever had was the rear wheel bearing started to go bad, so swapped that out. Of course, you got to do the things like, there was an old trick where you could put the headlights in an oven, bake them, remove the outer plastic, and then swap in clear lenses. I did that. It seemed like a real dumb thing to do, but you got to have the clear lenses. Otherwise, my S2000 was stock. Aside from stuff you'd want on a racetrack, hard dog roll bar. I don't recommend driving a car with racing harnesses, but you know, if you're only going to the track, at the track, from the track, it's not so bad. And then of course some race seats. Oh, and wheel and tire package. Otherwise, I left the car stock. One of the things I've always believed is that you have to maximize yourself before you start maximizing your equipment. I love squeezing as much value as possible out of crap gear, as exhibited by the terrible used GoPros I use to make all these videos. For me, the S2000 has always been a great partner for personal development as a driver. When this car went on sale in 2009, it was $38,500. If you were to sell yours now, depending on how many miles you've got, I'm guessing you could get more than that, and that's probably only going to improve over time. Might have been smart for me to hold on to my S2000. Then again, it had those weird baked headlights and 5-point harnesses. Who wants that? I want that. SYNOPSIS. I said in the beginning that the S2000 helped me become the automotive journalist that I am, and that's 100% true. Before I was doing this, I made a decision back in, would have been 2006, that I wanted to be a great driver just in case I had the opportunity to test cars. And so I sold my Mini Cooper and I bought a rear drive platform that I knew I could learn how to do performance driving and precision driving. I bought an S2000 and I used that S2000 to hone my driving skills. Eventually, I had an opportunity to leverage some of those skills. As a guy who never went to college, my education, the one that connects most meaningfully with my career, was driving the S2000 at a racetrack, learning how to do donuts in that car. You guys want a deep cut? You know the movie An Officer and a Gentleman? Oh, this is really deep. Richard Gere, Louis Gossett Jr. To me, the Honda S2000 is Louis Gossett Jr. It took me, a guy who had latent potential, but a little lack of direction, and focused me and made me into somebody much better than I was at the beginning. Just like Louis Gossett Jr., who plays a drill instructor, the S2000 is raw, and it's rough, and it screams. All of those traits demanded that I become a better driver, and for that I am grateful. The Honda S2000, an officer and a gentleman. Oh hey, if you'd like me to come drive your car and you're in the greater Los Angeles area, or even California, let me know. Hit me on Instagram, tell me about your car. Doesn't have to be an amazing car, it can be a very basic car, and maybe I'll come review your car with you. What do you think? Does that sound like a good idea? I think that sounds like a good idea. And be sure to like and subscribe. Don't do it for me, do it for the S2000 CR. Wow.